Live from Los Angeles, welcome back to NBA Today.
Draymond Green notched a triple-double with 16, 11 rebounds, 10 assists in the Warriors' win over the Kings last night. It was his 31st career triple-double, and the Warriors now have won 30 of those 31 games. Long story short, Draymond impacts winning.
Talk to me about his son, please.
His son, look, well, speaking of Draymond, his son, Draymond Jr., was a guest equipment manager at the game last night. Janae, do you want to see a little bit more of little Draymond?
I think he's earned himself a role, and I love this. He was supposed to give it to Chris Chioza, I think, but he actually gave it to Clay.
To Clay. Well, Chris and Clay, they kind of look similar.
Clay, kind of.
Yeah, they kind of look
talking about the light skin, you know.
I didn't want to go in that direction.
He's the cutest. DJ, you're amazing, and Draymond, I love it.
Yes. All right, let's stick with the Western Conference. The biggest game of the night is the Suns versus the Lakers. The Suns have Devin Booker back, and the Lakers are still without AD. So, Chanae, give me one pick, or give me a pick for the game tonight.
Well, easily I'm going with the Phoenix Suns. I know that hurts, being an LA girl, especially athletically, but I'm going with the Phoenix Suns because let me read you this list right here, okay?
Well, you can look at the records and think that that's probably a pretty good choice.
You're right. Last, 10 games, they're 8-2 versus the Lakers, I think being 6-4, but Taylor Horton-Tucker, Dwight Howard, AD, obviously, that we talked about all this week, Avery Bradley, Malik Monk, Kent Bazemore, Kendrick Nunn, all unavailable. And then there's like a list of, there's a list of about 3 Suns.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a must win for the Suns just out of pride.
I'm going with the Suns too because that's not the Lakers. That's not the Lakers.
But it's also you and Phoenix and all that.
Yeah, I got to do that. So
you call all their games anyway, so.
Yeah, I call a couple of their games. It's not a big deal. But honestly, the Lakers are decimated, and I think we're going to see that across the league. I'm glad we're going to get to talk to Commissioner Adam Silver a little bit, just so we can get a little bit more clarity on how they're going to proceed. Yeah. To me, that's going to be the most important thing for the next month, how these teams are going to be able to navigate the COVID. Been signing extra players, avoiding some of the commissioner coming up.
Yeah.
How do they avoid the taxes? That's what
there we go, the luxury.
The annual NBA on Christmas Day tradition continues. We have 2 games on ESPN, Hawks Knicks, Mavs Jazz, and 3 games on ABC, including Celtics versus Bucks, Warriors versus Suns, and Nets Lakers. Welcome back to NBA Today. I'm Richard Jefferson, in for Malika Andrews. I want to toss to Malika Andrews as she interviews Commissioner Adam Silver. Malika, take it away.
Thanks, Richard. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are watching, you probably have noticed that I am not in studio. I have been in close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19. So I am vaccinated. I am boosted. I am currently testing negative, but out of an abundance of caution, I am going to be social distancing from my colleagues and continue to test. But this is something that we're seeing around the world. There are cases that continue to pop up, especially with the new variant, and the NBA is no exception. So joining me now to talk a little bit more about that is NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Malika, and I hope you're okay.
I hope I'm okay, too. I really appreciate the thoughts, but let's just jump right in. I mentioned that we're seeing a spike in COVID-19 cases around the world, but we're also seeing it in the NBA with upwards of 80 players testing into the COVID protocols with Christmas Day rapidly approaching. So are there any plans right now to stop or pause the season to allow for the spread to slow?
No plans right now to pause the season. We've, of course, looked at all the options. But frankly, we're having trouble coming up with what the logic would be behind pausing right now as we look through these cases, literally ripping through the country right now, putting aside the rest of the world. I think we're finding ourselves where we sort of knew we were going to get to for the past several months, and that is that this virus will not be eradicated, and we're going to have to learn to live with it. And I think that's what we're experiencing in the league right now.
Well, so to be clear, with Christmas Day approaching, there are no plans to pause or delay those games, but are there any contingency plans that are being put into place now?
We'd need to talk for a few hours to talk about the contingencies. So, yes, I would say beginning from the day we initially shut down the league, in March of 2020, we've done nothing but look at contingencies. So, of course, we always have those, but at least as of now, our plan is to move forward, not just for the Christmas Day games, but there are another roughly 23 games scheduled between now and Christmas. And, every day is a new day. We get the overnight testing, we look where we are in terms of our rosters and make our decisions. But at least, as I said, it seems for us that the right and responsible thing to do, taking all the factors into consideration, is to continue to play.
So, right and responsible thing to do. Why is it then that there's a delay in waiting to test players every day until after Christmas and not starting that more immediately to stop that spread?
Well, it's only that we're shifting to a different protocol post-Christmas, and that plan had been in place for several weeks. I mean, I think same with the rest of the country. I think I recently heard something like a third of the country travels for the holiday break, that when you have additional travel, when you have families getting together, it requires us upping our testing beyond the already enormous amount of testing we're doing. So that's what will be beginning post-Christmas. But right now, I mean, I'd say we're doing an enormous amount of testing. I think it's doubtful there are many organizations, frankly, anywhere that do more testing than we in the other leagues do.
I think we're at the point, and you mentioned that the world has changed. I think that we're at the point now, right, where we have vaccines, where we have booster shots, but we're still seeing people who are boosted, who have been vaccinated, test positive for COVID-19. So is there any thought to, or have you guys discussed at all, having asymptomatic players who have COVID-19 be able to play through that, or similarly to what we saw in the NFL, be able to test out faster?
Yeah, well, let me just say, I mean, we have a lot of data we look at in terms of players and coaches that have gone through the 3-shot protocol, meaning the 2 mRNA shots and then a booster and then past 2 weeks. Only a very small number of those people have then been breakthrough cases where they've turned positive, and they essentially have been asymptomatic or very mild symptoms. We're also dealing with a large group that either have one J&J shot or haven't been boosted yet. So I would just say to our community, really to everyone, at least based on the data the NBA has, the boosters are highly effective, and we're strongly encouraging everyone to get them. And in fact, in our league right now, we're up, we're around 97% vaccinated, but we're up to about 65% of our players have been boosted, and we're in active discussions with the Players Association to look for ways to get that number even higher. So we're not, in terms of your question, whether in essence we can treat this as endemic and people begin to move on and we only test those who are symptomatic and deal with those, we're not quite there yet, but we're paying a lot of attention to what other leagues are doing. The NFL just came out with a new protocol. Of course, we talk to the other leagues. We're talking to lots of other organizations, lots of doctors and scientists to figure out what the right thing to do is. We do think there's an opportunity to potentially lead here. As I said, we have the advantage that we have a highly vaccinated group. We're moving towards a group that, well above the national average in terms of boosters, but we'd like to get it way up into the 90%, just like we have with vaccinated. And maybe we can demonstrate that there's a way that people can move forward, again, recognizing that this virus, unfortunately, isn't going anywhere, and it's just going to become part of our lives for the foreseeable future.
Well, because it's going to be part of our lives, sort of statistically speaking, I know that you said you're not there yet in terms of allowing players who are asymptomatic to play, but because there isn't daily testing, I'm getting alerts on my phone about the Toronto Raptors and their plane and having so many players test and awaiting other results. Isn't that already the case, that players are playing with asymptomatic COVID cases? So is there any thought to maybe measuring viral load or something like that to heighten the responsibility around playing with asymptomatic players?
We always are measuring viral loads with our PCR test. That's part of the protocol. And so it's something, again, that it's not just our doctors, but the medical community is looking at. I think they're already realizing that you can move away from the 10-day protocol when you have players who are vaccinated and boosted, that it seems that the virus runs through their systems faster. They become not just asymptomatic, but more importantly, they're not shedding the virus anymore. That's the real concern in terms of others. And so we are actively looking at shortening the amount of days that a player is out before he can return to the floor.
When might we see that, the next steps of that, shortening the time that they're out? Because, looking at Christmas Day, right, and the number of superstars that could potentially be out for that game, could we see that in effect by then?
It's unclear. We're comfortable with the protocols we're following right now as we move through the week. And as I said, I mean, there's no doubt those 5 Christmas Day games are important. But as you know, we play many games every day. And so, this is an evolving science. We're working with a great team of doctors and scientists. We have a lot of data at our disposal. And at the same time, we talk regularly to the Players Association because first and foremost, we want to make sure we're being responsible and that our players are healthy and safe, and they believe also in the system, that they know that they're being overseen in a very responsible way. And as I said, everything we're doing is in partnership with the Players Association.
Well, and at the end of the day, as we've heard, for instance, Sean Marks say, it's about, we're talking about basketball and we're talking about winning, and that's what organizations are really focused on. So what worries do you have, or potentially have you heard from other players or owners or executives around the league about the competitive integrity of games when you have one team that has signed a ton of players just to have enough bodies to be on the floor, and another team that has more of their all-stars and closer to what their roster looked like when they envisioned this season?
We've been dealing with this situation since March of 2020, and of course, the ultimate goal in this league is to win. But I think there's also a realization that in every season there's only going to be one champion. I think there's a real sense of brotherhood in this among the guys in this league. There's a sense of partnership among the teams. And as I said, I also think there's a broader responsibility. I mean, sports have been a bellwether of sorts in our society. We were a bellwether when we shut down in March of 2020. A lot of people paid attention for the first time and took this virus seriously. And I think now, as we're dealing with the current situation, our ability to find a way to keep operating is also significant for society, to show that there are ways, despite living in this COVID era, that we can find a safe and responsible way to keep going. So I think there's a recognition that these are the cards that we've been dealt. Of course, there's a certain amount of unfairness that comes with playing in certain cases with a group of, some teams where particular players are out because of COVID protocols. But the other advantage is we do have an 82-game season, and we have a long playoffs. And my sense is things will work out by the end of the season.
Commissioner, I want to circle back to something you said a little bit earlier about being in conversations with the Players Association. Have you revisited the idea of mandatory vaccines?
No. I mean, it's something that we proposed. It's something that the Players Association wouldn't agree to. Having said that, though, we're at roughly 97% of our players have been vaccinated. And so from my standpoint, I'd rather focus on the 97% than the 3%. And incidentally, many of the 3% now have gotten COVID. So, they have developed antibodies. To me, the focus right now is on boosters for the 97% of players who have been vaccinated. As I said before, among those players who are eligible to get boosters, because as you know, there's a waiting period after your second shot.
Yep.
So, but among those who are eligible to get boosted, we're at something like 65%. And ideally, I'd like to see that number get to 97% as well. That's what we're focused on right now with the PA.
I know that looking around the country, it's just now coming out that the majority of cases in the United States, because I do want to stress this isn't just the league. The league is a microcosm of what's going on in the world. But we're seeing that Omicron is the dominant variant. Is that the same in the NBA right now?
Yes. I mean, and again, we're in the unique position where we can sequence every single positive case we get, and it's beyond dominant in the league right now. We're up probably around 90% of the cases right now that we're sequencing are Omicron.
So before I let you go, Commissioner, considering the cases around the country, considering Christmas Day is coming, considering that is usually one of the most exciting times of the NBA calendar, we've seen crowds in Toronto, for example, be reduced, and that's something that is a government decision, not a team decision. But why should people feel safe right now going to games?
I think people should feel safe going to games. I mean, first of all, it's of course an individual decision. I think it has a lot to do with following appropriate protocols, being vaccinated, getting boosted, wearing a mask, of course, makes a big difference. I mean, I think that those people under those situations should be comfortable living their lives. I mean, public health officials will weigh in if there's a change in approach. But right now, under those conditions, people have been living their lives. I'm here in New York, where it seemingly is the epicenter of the pandemic right now and of this particular variant. Restaurants remain full. Stores are full. People are preparing for the Christmas holidays. I mean, again, I recognize things could change, but right now, at least, if people take the proper precautions, I think people should feel comfortable going out.
Thank you so much for taking the time today, Commissioner. I know these weren't necessarily easy questions to answer. I really appreciate you coming by and stopping on NBA Today. Please stay healthy and have a wonderful holiday.
You too, Malika. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's it for NBA Today. I really appreciate everyone listening in to what the commissioner had to say. I want to stress, he said that vaccines work, that masking works, that testing works.